Welcome in everyone to another Baldur's Gate 3 build video. I am Senpai Zaya. Thank you so much for being here today. Alright, so the build I'm bringing you guys today is known as the Frost Knight. Now, what the Frost Knight is a thematic and equipment focused build. I don't usually always do equipment focused builds, but there are a very specific set of equipment in the game that is focused on doing like ice/frost damage in the game, and I really wanted to build around it, but I didn't want to take the stereotypical route, just going like wizard or sorcerer and just casting ice spells and getting like the benefits. I wanted to make it a little bit more unique and a little bit more thematic to play. So we are a melee and ranged character. We can do both, but we're primarily supposed to be in the front lines and protecting our allies, which I thought was like a really cool thing, because to me, like a Frost Knight or even like a Frost Sentinel, I guess would be a more accurate term for this character. They like, to me, frost powers like that are like they should be more defensive, right? Like I kind of view them as like more of like a defensive thing. They can still have great offense, but to me it seems like a more defensive element, whereas like fire would be the opposite. It's more like offensive focus, right? I feel like that's usually how it's portrayed in like anime or gaming or whatever. So I wanted to build around that theme and still make like a pretty strong and powerful character. And I think I accomplished it today. So without further ado, let's jump right into character customization and see how to make this build work. All right, so hopping into character creation, the first thing we're going to do, of course, is pick our origin. Now, the origin for this, you can either go with custom character or the Dark Urge. That's the two that I recommend. You can do any of the ones you want, really, but I know most people want to play as like their own custom character, so that's why I recommend that. For the race, as you can see, I have a Dragonborn here. Now, Dragonborn, I will say, is not absolutely necessary for this build, but I have not got to make a build with a Dragonborn yet, and I felt like this would be the perfect thematic build to make a Dragonborn with, and especially because we can get their Frost Breath, which is going to help, because up until we get like our later level spells for this build, we won't have like an AoE option to apply like our cold and get like all the benefits of like doing cold damage. So this will give us a way to do that. And plus I just thought it was really cool because it's not like a spell, so you also don't have that disadvantage from casting spells in like melee range, and we are going to be in melee range a lot. So I thought it was really cool, and it could just offer some utility. But I just really like the way that the Dragonborn would fit the theme of this build, so that's why I went with them. But you can go whatever race you want. It's not too important for this build specifically. And then our starting class is going to be fighter. So for this build, we are going to take 7 levels of fighter and then 5 levels of abjuration wizard. And the reason why we are doing that specifically is something that we'll get into later on in the video, but that's how we're going to go it. You can also go 6 and 6 just as like a disclosure for later on if you want to, but because of the equipment that we're going to be using, I recommend 7 and 5 because it ends up benefiting us a lot more. So moving on to the fighting style, you can go defense, and I think that's the one you should go. It's going to be the best one. And then your background, I would just recommend taking like sage, since we're going to have a high int, and just to be able to pass them like ability checks, because int's going to be our second highest stat, and we're already going to have a high strength for that. So you can just do that. And then for the stats, let me adjust it really quick. This is how I would personally do it right here. And then with the last 2 points, you can throw them into whatever you want. If you want to not have a negative to your int, you can go into to your initiative, not int. You can go the last 2 points in dex, or you can put them literally wherever you want. Doesn't matter too much here, but this is how I would basically do it. I will say that there is the headband of intellect that you can wear, and so if you wanted to dump int and then just wear that through your entire playthrough, you could. However, our head slot, there is a specific hat that we are going to want to wear, so our head slot is taken up by that hat, which is why in character creation I like to put my int up as well. This is how I would do it. This would be level 1, but let's move on to level 2. All right, so moving on to level 2, really simple. You're going to get access to action surge, which is one of the best class abilities in the game, and I don't really need to explain it because everyone at this point pretty much knows what action surge does. This is going to allow us to do a lot more in combat, which is always really nice. Now, moving on to level 3, you're going to pick your subclass, and for this build, we are going Eldritch Knight, and there's a couple specific reasons why we're going to go Eldritch Knight. One, because we are mixing casting spells and doing melee combat. Eldritch Knight's going to be the best out of these 3, especially because we're going to get levels of wizard, and we want to get the benefit of having 2 casters, so that way we can get more spell slots and our total spell casting level will be higher. Now, Eldritch Knights are 1/3 casters, so you don't get much in terms of your overall caster level, but it still helps a lot more. And I do think it's the best subclass for this build, especially because the equipment that we're going to use that I'm going to cover later on in the equipment section. Now, for your cantrips, the one obviously I'm going to recommend is Ray of Frost. Now, the reason why I recommend Ray of Frost is because we are a Frost Knight and it fits the thematic, but I will say that once you get the staff, the Morning Frost, which is the staff you can see here that I'm wielding, it does come with a Ray of Frost cantrip on it, so it's not completely necessary, but you could always pick it up now and just start the thematic of this build already, and then later on, once you get the Morning Frost, because it does take a little bit to get, then you could just respec, and that totally works just fine. So I would recommend Ray of Frost, but if you didn't want Ray of Frost and you still wanted like a ranged option, then the highest damage one's going to be Firebolt, so you could just take Firebolt. And then for your second cantrip here, it's pretty much up to you, but I would recommend Friends if you're not going to have a party member that has Friends. So that's the one that I would say just take. And if you are, then you can pick whatever else you want there. It doesn't matter too much. Now, in terms of your spells, you're going to be able to pick a total of 3 spells, 2 from your regular Eldritch Knight sub class spell list, and then 1 from your expanded. So I would recommend taking Shield. Shield is going to be absolutely necessary because Shield is going to be our best defensive spell for us, and Shield is just, it's the bread and butter of Eldritch Knight and any like melee character that has access to magic and has access to shield. So take shield and then chromatic orb. And the reason why we take chromatic orb is because of the fact that we can pick the frost one. So it's going to be a higher damage frost spell for us that can also create an icy service. Now for your expanded spells, you have a couple different good options here. I love the ritual spells, one, because they don't take a spell slot, and 2, a lot of them are just really good utility and things to have, especially for exploration. Long Strider is my personal favorite because of the fact that you can cast this on your entire party and just have basically a permanent 10 feet of movement. That one's really nice. But if you're going to have another party member that's going to have access to spells like this, then you can just have them and you can get your spell slot for something else. Like Ice Knife, for example. Ice Knife is another good ice spell option here. So take Long Strider if you're not going to have another party member that's going to have access to it. If not, then just take Ice Knife and you'll be just fine as well. Because again, we're focusing on thematic here. So we are trying to take the spells that fit the theme the best. Of course, you could do this more min-maxy and until you get the Morning Frost, until you get your equipment. There are options out there that could technically be stronger, but you know me, I like to focus on the thematics of my builds, and I want you to be able to fit the thematic of the build that I'm bringing to you as soon as possible. So moving on to level 4, we're going to get a couple different things here. You're going to get another first level spell. There's a couple different options. None of them are ice focused, so there's that. Now we don't have really any spells to concentrate on currently, so protection from good and evil isn't too bad here, and there are a lot of enemies in the game, especially at this stage in the game, that this could actually be beneficial to. So you can take that if you want, or if you wanted like another AoE option, since your Dragon Breath is once per long rest, then you could take like Thunder Wave, so that way when you do get surrounded you have like that option, or Burning Hands, kind of the same thing, but Thunder Wave is going to knock those enemies back. Now for your feat, there are 2 things that you can do, and it really depends on which way you want to take the build. So you can either take an ability score improvement, bump your strength up to 19, or what I recommend personally is taking Pole Arm Master and getting that started as soon as possible. It's really easy even before you get the Morning Frost to find like a quarterstaff or a spear, glaive halberd, whatever. You can find those really early in the game. There's like the spear that you find in the same place that with the guy that respecs, so you could just wield that until then. But this is going to give you a couple different things, and this is going to make it so when someone comes within range of you, you're going to get an opportunity attack on them. Super nice. And then you're also going to be able to make a bonus attack with your weapon when you do take the attack action. So this is going to just give us increased damage output all around. So I really like Polearm Master, and the first part is really important when we get Sentinel later on, because combining it with Sentinel is going to make it very, very strong, and you'll see why later. So moving on to level 5, pretty simple. You are going to get extra attack, and that's going to be huge because now we can make 3 attacks in a turn with our normal attack, extra attack, and then our Pole Arm Master attack. And of course, at these levels, you can always replace a spell if you want to. Now, moving on to level 6, there is going to be another thing that we're going to get, which is going to be a feat. So at this point, you have 2 options for your feats. Now, you can either get Sentinel like I talked about before, or you could take your ASI here. Now, there's a couple different things, because like with any strength character, technically you could always just like make those or buy the Elixir of Hill Giant strength potions. And so you will just have like a permanent, almost permanent like 21 strength. And so you can focus less on that and just like put your stats elsewhere. You could like bump your int up, and even in like character customization, if you knew you were going to do that, then you could do that too, and then just have like a higher int, focus on getting your int up to 20, and then just using those potions. But for that's more of like a cheese tactic. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I like to make these pretty like new user friendly guides, so that way you don't have to like worry about using like specific mechanics and stuff to make sure. So for that sake, that's why I do the way that I do here. But honestly, either one is going to be pretty good at this stage. So, and you'll have the next level anyway when it comes to your strength, because by this point you should have gotten the Hag's Hair. So it's not absolutely necessary to get your ASI as early as level 6. You could wait a little bit longer, but if you didn't want to, or if you just want to use Elixir Field Dragon Strength potions, then I recommend taking Sentinel. And this is going to be really, really nice for a couple different reasons. Now, one of the things that this is going to do, I'm just going to go over it really quick, is when an enemy makes a melee range attack. When an enemy makes an attack in melee range against one of your allies, you can use your reaction to make a weapon attack against the enemy. So that's nice. Increases our damage output and helps the whole like, like Frost Sentinel, Frost Knight type theme of being like this defensive like frontliner. And then when you hit an enemy with an opportunity attack and can no longer move for the rest of its turn, super nice, especially because if you are in the front line, you're protecting your squishies, and someone runs by you, when you have Polearm Master, you're going to get an opportunity attack on them, and then you'll completely stop them in their tracks, and then they're forced to stay in melee combat with you. And then the last one is you have advantage on opportunity attacks. So again, just nice benefits. So go ahead and take that. Like I said, there, or take an ASI is completely up to you, and depending on the way that you are going to play your specific character, and if you're going to use like the Elixir Field Giant Strength potions or not. Now, moving on to level 7, this is going to be our final level in Fighter. And the main thing that we get here, and the reason why we're going level 7, you can do this build 6 and 6, and especially because there is a little bit of overlap with like the use of our bonus action with this build, but I like taking it up to 7 because of a specific piece of equipment that I'm going to talk about later. It's better to take this build up to 7 to get full use out of that equipment. So what you get here is you get Warcaster. All it's going to allow us to do is after you cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack as a bonus action. So that way, if you want to be able to cast like Ray of Frost on one target and then hit someone with your weapon, it's like having your own kind of extra attack, but you can cast the spell too. So it has some utility, and again, like I said, there's a specific piece of equipment that works really, really well with this. This is going to increase our damage output, so I recommend taking that, but it also gives you some options as well for your ability to really like mix in and fit the theme of being able to do melee or cast spells and do a little bit of both. Now, we are going to get a level 2 spell slot here. And for this, you can take, none of these right now are too important. There's a couple different options. We don't have any options that are going to be fitting like the Ice Knight theme. So really, you can take whatever you want here. If you want to wear that ring that makes you see in magical darkness, you could take that. And then you're just like this absolute menace because you're fighting in the darkness. You force people to stay in the darkness. So that's really cool. Otherwise, take whatever you want. None of these are going to fit the theme, like I said before. So it's really just up to you. And then you can swap out a spell if you want to. Like you can take Thunderwave. And when you do swap spells with Eldritch Knight specifically, you actually get to swap into the full expand spell list. So that's something to note as well. And so for these, you could take like your Thunderwave, and if you want to pick up one of those ritual spells or just a different spell from the expand spell list, then you can feel free to do that here. Now, moving on to level 8, this is where we're going to switch over to Wizard. And let's see, let's go right here. And Wizard, first thing you're going to do when you get Wizard, you're going to be able to pick more cantrips. So for this, you can take whatever you want. I do recommend taking Shocking Grasp, even though it's not ice damage, because of the fact that we have War Magic. It's going to be nice to be able to, if you want to use War Magic, and there's certain targets where, like when they're wearing heavy armor, where it might be more beneficial or your chance of hitting them is higher because you have that advantage on that attack, to use your cantrip Shocking Grasp and then bonus action attacking with your War Magic feat. So that one's nice to have, is just to have like that melee option for you specifically because of the fact that you have Warcaster. So take that one, and then for the other ones, you can take like Blade Ward, Light, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just take the utility ones. You don't really need any more damaging cantrips at this point. Now for your spells, there is going to be a lot of options. Of course, there's going to be a lot of overlap with our expanded spell list because they are both pulling from the wizard spell book specifically. So for these, pretty universal. I would say since we have like our core damaging spells up to this level that we can have access to, plus there's also scrolls, which is another important thing with this build, is because we have now we have a wizard level, you can start learning any spells that you find in scrolls. You can start adding those to your repertoire. So make sure to do that, especially because you are going to get up to a 4th level spell slot, but you're not going to be able to pick a 4th level spell when you're leveling up with the way that this character's level breaks down, but you will have a 4th level spell slot. So make sure to find like a scroll of like Ice Storm, for example, and learn it from there. So that way you have access to that. So the other ones, you can just take whatever you want here. It's not too important. Just kind of pick and choose like the utility ones that you want to have, and then be on your merry way. And then prepared spells, again, it's going to be even less than the spells that you're actually selecting. So just pick whatever 4 that you want to use and want to have for utility based purposes. Now moving on to level 2, I'm specifically picking Abjuration Wizard because I feel like it's the best wizard subclass for melee focused spellcasters, because of the fact that we do get that arcane ward shield essentially. But you could also go like evocation, or there's a couple different ones that you could go. However, I think for this build, the best one by far is going to be Abjuration, especially because we are going to be using the shield spell quite a bit to help protect us. So basically the main thing that you get is when you cast an Abjuration spell, it's going to form magic around you. It's going to protect you. So depending on the spell levels, the amount of charges you're going to get, and then that's going to reduce damage and help you out a lot. So that's why I go that one. And then you're going to get a couple more spells here. Again, pick whatever you want. Doesn't really matter at this point. You can just take literally anything you want. You have your core spells, and none of the rest of the spells are like ice themed. So don't really need them too much. And again, mainly like just learn whatever spells you want from scrolls is what you're going to be doing with this build. And it's going to help out with your university that's not the word. It's going to help with your versatility is what I meant to say. Is that a word? I don't know. Let me know down in the comment section if that's a word. So now we are going to be having access to level 3 spell slots, but we can't pick level 3 spells yet, but we can pick level 2 spells. So that's just something to note, is because again, you're multi-classing with 2 different spellcasters. You are going to have access to spell slots differently than what character leveling up is going to give you access to, which is nice, and which is why you should really look out for scrolls when you start accessing these higher level spell slots. That way you can actually make use of them. You can always upcast, but it's nice to be able to get those spells and have access to them sooner rather than later with this build. So for level 2 spells, the first one I'm going to recommend you take absolutely is going to be Misty Step. Misty Step is just a pretty core spell for really any caster, anybody who has access to it probably should take Misty Step. And then for your second level 2 spell, there's a couple different options here. We don't really have a good concentration spell to concentrate on at this point in time, unless you have learned a different one from your scrolls. But if you haven't, you can take Phantasmal Force. And what this does, well, what's unique about it is the damage type that this does, because this is going to do 1d6 damage to a creature each turn, but it changes equal to the last damage type that the creature has suffered. So this, you can change this to cold damage and then get the benefits of your cold damage stuff with this. So that's like a one way to do it. It looks like it's psychic at first and wouldn't have any synergy, but it does. So that's like a cool one to take. Otherwise, you could take Hold Person. It's going to be another good like crowd control option for you. That's another really great one to concentrate on. And it does also fit the theme of being like this Sentinel Protector type character and just protecting your back line. Like, this character is perfect for having like 3 casters and then just you in the front line. Like, this character works perfect for that. So that's another really good one to have, because you can focus on that. Or maybe like there's like a spellcaster that's far away that's trying to get to your backline or something. Just Hold Person them, and then you can focus taking out all the melee characters because they can't escape from you because of your Sentinel and your Polearm Master and stuff. So I recommend those 2. There's a couple other good options, so if you want to take something different, you can, but those are the 2 that I'm going to recommend. And then just go ahead and take out whichever ones you don't want, and then put in your level 2 spells. All right, moving on to level 11. We're now a level 4 wizard, and we're going to get access to another level 3 spell slot. Still can't pick level 3 spells during level up, but that's okay. In terms of cantrip, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You can take whatever you want. And then of course you can go like Hold Person here for your other 2 spells that you get to pick. And then if you don't have a rogue in your party, you can take Knock, or sometimes you're just going to find locks that are incredibly difficult to unlock even with a rogue, so you can take Knock, and then that's pretty good. I like taking Knock, but again, feel free to pick and choose as you see fit, because The game is all about what you want most from it and how you want to play it. And then we're going to get our final feat here. This is where you can take an ASI, and depending on the way that you took the build, you can either bump your strength up by 2, or if you were going to use the elixir of Hill Giant strength, like I talked about before, then taking your intelligence up to 19, and then of course both of these would be 20 when you use the Hag's Hair. So just do whichever one you want from there, and you will be good to go depending on the way that you set up your build. Moving on to the final level, Wizard level 5. This is nice because we're going to get a level 4 spell slot, so that's going to be our level 4 spell slot that I talked about before, but we're also going to be able to pick 2 level 3 spells. Now, depending on the ones that you have taken from spell scrolls, this is going to change what you want to take, but assuming that you have not for whatever reason, that's what I'm going to go into so that I can give you a full guide. Number 1, haste. This should be the spell that you are going to be concentrating on for the rest of the game pretty much. Haste is absolutely insane. You guys know I'm a sucker for haste. I absolutely love haste, but it does so much, and for this character in particular, it can really, really allow you to do so much, especially having that extra action and everything. Like, you can cast a cantrip, bonus action in a normal attack, and then you can make like your 2 normal attacks, or you can cast 2 different spells, and then you have Action Surge. Like, it's just insane. Like, this really unlocks you to be able to do way more than a character should be able to do in a round of combat, and it won't feel like you're playing Baldur's Gate 3. You'll feel like you're playing an action RPG because you're just doing all of your moves all at once. So really, really great. Absolutely recommend haste if you do not have it from a spell scroll already. And then if you want to fit the theme of the build, you can take Glyph of Warding, because it does have that cold option, and it is like a big AoE option with cold damage that you can take. So that's really good. And the other one that I would absolutely recommend is Counterspell for this build. Counterspell is really, really nice to have, and this would help us even more be like that absolute ultimate protector. And it's an abjuration spell, so keep that in mind as well. Glyph of Warding is also abjuration, so that's why I'm recommending them over some of the other ones, like the normal options like Fireball and Lightning Bolt and stuff, or even like Ice Storm or Sleet Storm. Ice Storm's good, Sleet Storm's like eh. I mean, it's decent, but doesn't do damage. So, but they're both abjuration spells, so that's really nice to have for our subclass and for stacking up that ward and making us even harder to kill. So once again, those are the 2 that I recommend. If you found a scroll for one of them, just take the other and you'll be fine. But make sure that at some point you do find both of these spells, because these are going to be really, really great for you because of the fact they're abjuration, because of the fact that one's a big AoE, one can protect your party even more, and this is like a protector type character. So those are the 2 that I recommend the most. And then of course haste, just take haste, absolutely necessary if you want to unlock your full capabilities. Now, in here, just move whatever you want, put those 2 spells in, and that is all for character creation. But we're going to move on to the equipment section here now in a second, because the equipment, this build is equipment focused. As you can see over here, I have quite a bit of pieces of equipment here, and they are all necessary to this build. Not like 100% necessary, but if you want to get the full benefit and the full effect out of this build, you do need to run these pieces of equipment. So I'm going to go into them more in detail in the next section. So let's go. All right, so the equipment section for this build is going to be a little bit different because there are specific pieces of equipment. So I'm going to go over those first, and I'm going to go over the other recommendations that I do recommend for this build that doesn't take those slots. So the first one is, of course, going to be the Morning Frost. Now, the Morning Frost is going to be your primary weapon through the majority of your playthrough, and then you can switch it out once you do get the legendary quarterstaff, the Mirror Shakir, however you say it. But the Morning Frost is going to be amazing because it's going to give us everything we want. For one, it's going to give you that extra cold damage, as you can see on the screen, and then it's going to give you the ability to inflict chilled on targets, which is super nice, and have ways to inflict like vulnerability to cold damage. You're doing even more cold damage with it. And on top of all of that, it's also, since it is a quarterstaff, it's going to be able to be used for our Sentinel and Pole Arm Master. And it's one of the primary reasons why we're doing that is because it is a quarterstaff. So combining all of that, that's going to be your main weapon. And you can acquire this pretty early on in the game. It just requires you to go to the Underdark. So I'll have a link down below to all of these equipment, so you can go to the wiki and find out exactly how to get them if you do not know how to get them currently at this point in time. Now, the next one is going to be the Cold Brim Hat, and that's going to give you the whenever you afflict an enemy with any condition, it also is going to apply 2 turn encrusted with frost. So again, that's going to go with like our morning frost and all this combined. Again, we want to do cold damage, and we want to apply the negative status effect from doing cold damage on an enemy. So this is going to help with that. And basically, once you stack it up enough, it's going to freeze targets, which is going to be like the ultimate CC because they're completely frozen, right? So that is why we are doing that. And again, it all fits together. And then similarly, the Winter's Clutches has basically the same, almost the same effect. So when the wearer does deal cold damage, it's going to inflict 2 turns of encrusted with frost upon targets. And if you don't know what encrusted with frost is, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words like crazy. It's super early over here. They have disadvantage on dex saves, which is nice. But if there are 7+ turns remaining, then they make a Constitution saving throw, or they take 1d4 cold damage and become frozen. And then if they do save it, then they just take half damage on a save. And so, again, you want to stack this up, so you want as many pieces as possible, so you can stack it up and get that frozen status effect on enemies to really increase your CC and damage output. All right, so the next piece of equipment is the main reason why we do take the Warcaster and why we take Eldritch Knight up to level 7. That's going to be the Ring of Elemental Infusion. So when you deal the elemental damage, basically with a spell or cantrip, the element infuses your weapon, and until the end of your next turn, you deal an additional 1d4 damage of that element on your first successful weapon attack. So really nice because you can cast Ray of Frost, get the extra ice damage on your weapon, or even Shocking Grasp if you're like completely in melee combat and surrounded or something, and then get that extra damage, and then you can use your bonus action to make that attack and get that damage as well. And if you're hasted, then this will be really nice because then you can do that again and get that bonus damage again. So it's a nice way to pull off extra damage and make full use of this ring. And then the final piece of specific equipment that I'm going to talk about is going to be the Snowburst ring. And what this does is when the wearer deals cold damage, they also create a 4.5 meter circle of ice around the target, which is really nice because of the fact that like we are going to be wearing any of the types of pairs of like boots, for example, that make it so that way like you're not affected by like difficult terrain and like those like icy surfaces and stuff. So this won't affect us, but this will make it to where enemies are going to slip, they're going to trip, it's going to give us more CC. If we're in melee combat, we're hitting them with the Morning Frost, for example, then it's going to create that icy terrain around them as well. So it's going to be even harder for them to get away from us because they're not only are they going to have to evade our attack with advantage on them, opportunity attack when they're leaving, like trying to leave melee combat from us, but on top of that, they also have the icy surface that they can slip on as well. So once you get people in this, then they are not escaping you, and that's really what this build is about. So those are the main things. Other than that, there are a couple other options that I'm going to have flashing on the screen. Just pick up like some heavy armor and a good shield, for example, that's going to give you some great AC, some great benefits, make you super tanky since you are going to be in melee combat. The best shield, in my opinion, for this build, not talking about like legendaries and stuff like that, is going to be the Absolute's Protector. And the main reason why is because of the fact that it is going to give you the Fire Shield Chill, which is level 4 evocation spell, but it allows you to cast Fire Shield in the chill format specifically, which is perfect for our Frost Knight themed build, and that's going to just give you even more damage if someone does manage to hit you, even though you will have a pretty high AC with this build, and you'll also have the shield spell. If they do hit you, they're going to take some cold damage, and of course, with combining with all your other effects, that's going to add more CC, more damage, everything. So really nice. Other than that, just pick up some one of the boots that make it so you don't slip on like icy surfaces, difficult terrain to slow you down, whatever, and then whatever else you want, and then some heavy armor, and you should be good to go. All right, and that pretty much covers everything. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed the video, and I really do hope you have fun with this build. Let me know down in the comment section below any other builds or thematics that you want me to try to make a build around, and I can absolutely do my absolute best to try. But that's all the time I have for you today. So if you did enjoy this Baldur's Gate 3 build video, make sure to leave a like on the video, as well as hit the subscribe button right down there and click the bell so that way you are notified whenever I do upload. I do upload every Friday, so make sure to come back next Friday for next week's build video. And as always, I will see you in the next one.